The blindfold was supposed to make me guess a piece of chocolate. Instead, it became the moment that forced me to face the one truth I had spent years running from: I was in love with my best friend. And when her lips touched mine in the darkness, I realized the hardest part was not figuring out the flavor. It was figuring out whether she had just risked our entire friendship because she felt the same way. My best friend, Claire, had always been the person who could turn an ordinary day into something unforgettable. We had met during college when she accidentally spilled coffee on my notebook, and somehow that embarrassing moment became the beginning of a friendship that survived graduation, failed relationships, career disappointments, and every terrible decision we were too stubborn to admit were terrible. She knew when I was pretending to be happy. She knew when I needed silence instead of advice. Most importantly, she knew that after my last relationship ended badly, I had stopped believing that love was something meant for me. What she didn't know was that somewhere between late-night conversations and quiet walks home, my feelings for her had changed. I never told her. I was terrified that one confession could destroy everything. So I became the perfect best friend instead. I listened when she talked about dating. I celebrated when she got excited about someone new. I even smiled when she told me that someday she wanted to meet someone who made her feel completely safe. Every time she said those words, I wondered if she realized that I had been standing beside her all along. One rainy Saturday evening, Claire invited me to her apartment for what she called a ridiculous experiment. She had bought several chocolates, fruits, sauces, and candies and wanted to record a funny taste test video for her small social media page. She insisted that I participate because, according to her, I had the worst taste buds on earth. I laughed and agreed, never imagining that the evening would become the most emotionally terrifying night of my life. After setting everything up, she tied a soft black scarf around my eyes. I could hear her moving around the kitchen, opening drawers and laughing quietly. She placed something sweet in my hand and told me to guess. I tasted it and guessed strawberry. She laughed because it was raspberry. Then came chocolate, orange, caramel, and something so sour that I nearly jumped out of my chair. For a few minutes, everything felt normal. It was just Claire being Claire, and me being the friend who would willingly embarrass himself for her amusement. Then the room became strangely quiet. I heard her footsteps approaching, but she didn't say anything. I could feel my heartbeat changing. She stood close enough that I could sense her presence, and suddenly the playful atmosphere disappeared. I asked if she was preparing another strange flavor, but she only smiled. Then she gently touched my face. Before I could understand what was happening, she kissed me. It lasted only a few seconds, but those seconds seemed to stretch forever. My mind went completely blank. I could hear nothing except my own heartbeat. When she pulled away, I sat frozen beneath the blindfold, unable to decide whether I should laugh, ask what had just happened, or remove the scarf and run. Then, in a trembling voice, she whispered, "Guess the flavor." I knew the answer immediately. It wasn't chocolate. It wasn't strawberry. It wasn't any food at all. It was Claire. It was the person whose presence had slowly become the safest place in my life. But I couldn't say that. I removed the blindfold and looked at her. For the first time in years, Claire wasn't smiling. Her eyes were wet, and there was fear on her face. She looked less like the confident woman who always knew what to say and more like someone who had just placed her heart on a table and was waiting to find out whether it would be returned broken. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the courage it takes to tell someone what your heart is really feeling, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Sometimes one honest moment can change an entire life. I asked her why she had done it. She looked down and admitted that she had been carrying the same secret I had. She had fallen in love with me months earlier, but she was terrified of saying it because our friendship mattered too much. She had watched me hide my feelings, thinking I was simply afraid of relationships. She didn't know I was afraid of losing her. Then she told me something that broke through every wall I had built. She said that whenever something wonderful happened, I was the first person she wanted to tell. Whenever something went wrong, I was the person she wanted beside her. She said she had dated other people, but every relationship felt incomplete because she was comparing everyone to the person who had already become her home. I wanted to tell her I felt exactly the same, but fear still held me back. I told her that if we crossed that line, there was no guarantee we could ever return to the friendship we had before. She nodded through her tears and said she knew. That was the terrifying part. Love wasn't a guarantee. It was a choice. So I made mine. I reached for her hand and told her that I had loved her for longer than I was willing to admit. I told her I had stayed silent because losing her would hurt more than never having her. She smiled through her tears, and for the first time, there was no confusion between us. No pretending. No carefully chosen words. Just two people finally admitting the truth they had both been hiding. We didn't suddenly become perfect. The next few weeks were awkward, funny, and sometimes frightening. We had to learn how to be honest in a completely different way. We still argued about stupid things. She still stole food from my plate. I still pretended to hate her terrible movies. But something had changed. The friendship wasn't gone. It had simply grown into something deeper. Months later, we kept the blindfold from that night. Claire folded it neatly and placed it inside a small wooden box with a photograph of us. Whenever I looked at it, I remembered that love sometimes doesn't arrive like thunder. Sometimes it grows quietly inside a friendship, waiting patiently for two frightened people to become brave enough to see it. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. You never know who might need the reminder that sometimes the person standing beside you has been waiting for you to notice them. And before the story ends, comment, "I believe in second chances," if you think some of the most beautiful love stories begin with friendship. As for Claire and me, we still laugh about that ridiculous taste test. Whenever someone asks how our relationship began, she tells them I couldn't guess the flavor. I always correct her and say I knew the answer immediately. Because that night, blindfolded in the darkness, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to admit. The flavor was love. And it had been there all along.